for joining my talk. My name is Christian Coletti, and I'm a year-round intern with Sandia National Labs, as well as a graduate student with Georgia Tech. I'll be going over my work using reinforcement learning for forward flight, a project that I've been working with my co-workers in 5449 over the last couple of years. To give you an idea of what we are trying to do, on the left is a typical autopilot similar to the ones I've designed before, which are not quick to respond and typically just follow waypoints. On the right, the airplane in green is trained to fly with reinforcement learning, or RL, to do something much more agile and complex. In the video, RL algorithm was able to best a trained Air Force pilot 5-0 in a flyoff. RL has a special ability to be used to learn more complex tasks in a way that we may not understand, and because of that, DARPA and other government agencies are looking to field agile aerial systems that can achieve complex tasks. Building a hardware system to demonstrate this would be a valuable leap forward in this pursuit. This is what my coworkers and I have been working to accomplish over the past couple summers. Fielding a real-life airplane with RL needs 4 major components, which I'll dive deeper into during this presentation. First, in order to train the aircraft, we built a dynamic simulation that the aircraft is able to act with control deflections and sense how it is performing by state observation. We parallelized the full nonlinear 6-degree freedom dynamics in order to derive a state space model with high enough fidelity to match the real world. This year, I refactored this environment to go even faster and changed it so that it's easy to switch in other models of aircraft if we want to train other platforms. Second, we trained a neural network using reinforcement learning, specifically PPO, in order to navigate to a target point in the environment, which you see here in the center of the video, right there, on the right. This is a difficult problem, but a designed flight controller was used to warm start the network for only a few time steps, a method which we call WASP. This resulted in training convergence for some cases. The best performing networks are able to guide agents to the target 98% of the time. Ongoing work is looking at how to train more complex objectives while still retaining convergence. In order to make the jump to real life, which is termed the sim to real problem, we must carefully model and identify the aircraft we are using for flights. We first estimated the parameters using equations based on geometry, but this year we have been using vortex lattice methods and are investigating using PyTorch to tune the parameters to their true values. Finally, the last thing we need is to implement a full stack control loop on hardware, which is something we accomplished last summer. What you see is only a half result. It is the demonstration of a neural network in the loop, but the neural network is only trained with warm starting and not any reinforcement learning. In order to cross the sim to real gap, more work with system identification and training convergence must be completed in order to achieve a full RL demo. In summary, this year I've worked with my co-workers at 5449 to build and validate new tools for training RL, and existing work shows that using RL to train fixed-wing flight shows promise. This is a bit of an eye chart, but it's just a summary of my talk. Thank you for your interest, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great job, Christian. And if, like you mentioned, I think I do see a question in the chat. Matthew asked, what environment did you train the RL model?
I think you're muted. I think you're muted, Christian.
Thank you. I'm not sure why that happened, but I appreciate it. We have been looking at, we were looking at environments, but most of the environments that we were looking at were linear models or transition between linear models. And in order to cross the sim to real gap, we needed a full nonlinear model. And so we purpose-built the 6-degree of freedom dynamic environment that we're using for training in this case.
I have a question.
Sure.
How did the Air Force pilot take being beat 5 times by a machine learning algorithm?
He, in the video, and maybe I can go back and you can look at it a bit more while I talk about this, because it's very interesting. And right here. There we go. If you'll look at the video, and maybe we have enough time, you'll see that the green aircraft engages the yellow aircraft. The RL engages the human at very close quarters, coming right at each other's flight. That's not typically flight patterns that they're trained for, because you can't really train for that in a friendly scenario where you're trying to learn it. And so the RL was said to have kind of exploited a high risk tactic that humans would never try in order to do this. And that's one of the benefits, is that
Makes sense.
You know, they might be able to do that and have no fear, but it wasn't kind of a full victory in this case. There was also some things that came out that the pilot had to find the other aircraft, whereas the RL agent always knew where the human pilot was at all times. So he took it pretty well. He said that it was very difficult to fight against, but that it was very much of a challenge, and he's not surprised that he was beat.
Do you think that machine learning algorithms will eventually go from man-piloted aircraft to something, I don't know, like on the verge of that movie Stealth that's, you know, gosh, X many years old, where aerial dogfights and aerial fights in general are autopiloted by machine learning algorithms and AI?
Yes, and I'll tell you one of the main reasons for it is that humans have a G load cap at about 9 Gs, 10 Gs. AI doesn't have any sort of caps like that, and so it will be very difficult for a human to exist in, you know, a future space where AI is able to outmaneuver humans just by biology. Now, the question that always exists is when. It could be 5 years off, it could be 25 years off, or 100 years off. There's really no way to tell.
But by removing the weak link, which would be the human organism within this fighting machine, we would be able to increase our combat efficiency.
That's the goal, yes, and that's what DARPA is looking forward to.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.